Let's wind up our discussion about Little John and Windiat article, Beyond Language Learning, Some Perspectives on Materials Design. And we will conclude this article by analyzing the notion of how we could go beyond language learning. I mean, how could we design materials which invite us to go beyond the notion of conventional sort of language learning. Right. Before we proceed with the discussion of this module, I would just like you to pause the video for a while and reflect on some of the questions listed here. And these questions are already been designed just for you to invite and just you to encourage to think about the contents of the article, which we have already discussed. Right. What are the alternative perspectives on materials design surveyed by Little John and Windiat? Just think, how does this article provide various ways in which materials may contribute to learners' perceptions of knowledge, language learning, and roles or values and opportunities or attitudes? Just pause the video for a while and think about these questions. All right. Well, what's the notion of going beyond language learning? Well, materials, their design could be, could affect or could influence our classroom activities. So, for example, if we've got closed exercises, they might, as discussed in one of the previous modules, they might, assume students as passive recipients of language knowledge. And on the other hand, if we have got materials produced in a natural way, I mean, based on some authentic texts, they might assume their role as active learners, I mean, sort of interactive roles, right? So the main essence of the article in brief is the main argument by Little John and Windiat. We should try to endeavor to produce materials that require learners to question the reality, I mean, which the language learners inhabit, instead of, accepting things on their face value. And remember, I gave you the example of first conditional. So if you want to teach first conditional, so instead of, if you come, I will go sort of teaching this sort of structure, why don't we bring in this structure in the form of an exercise which is engaging, which is problem posing, which could be, which could be activating the schema of the students or their prior knowledge about first conditional. So this is what the main essence of the article is. So this approach, according to Little John and Windiat, will help free teachers, both teachers and learners, and they will be able to better continue to assume their roles even beyond the classroom, right? How we could go beyond language learning, how we could make materials which help us go beyond language learning. Firstly, this has been looked at, in relationship to some questions listed here. Do they extend general or specialist knowledge? What view of knowledge they present? I mean, the materials. What implications are there for language learning? Thirdly, how materials design structure the teacher-learner relationship. I mean, what roles relationship are offered. So if we want to go beyond the notion of language learning, and if we want to just make our students work with not only the content, but also the language itself, we need to reflect on these questions and take these questions as a guidance, as a guideline, and what social values and attitudes do they present. And this is important here because if some of the language materials go against the moral sensibilities or sensitivities of students, they might, touch upon their moral sensibilities. As remember, I gave you the example of bringing in some tasks based on sexism. So this is how, in brief, this article presents a good viewpoint, good perspectives on materials design, and the writers, encourage us to think, to design materials in such a way which help the learners not only deal with the content but also the language itself.